Alright guys, what's going on? This is Otis here, and today's commentary I wanted to talk about my real-life interactive experiences that I've had with the Battlefield 3 vehicles. And now, I've never been in the military. My dad was in the military, so I grew up on bases, and I've always been around people who were in the military, and recently got out, especially at UPS. We take a lot of retired military people, and so we've gotten to see, like with fishing too, being out in the ocean, we've got to interact with some of these vehicles and some people who are serving and stuff. And so I'm gonna go talk about how I've had some pretty amazing experiences with some of these vehicles, and we'll start with the Viper, which is my personal favorite vehicle in Battlefield 3. I'm a little helicopter whore, which pretty much everyone knows, especially when you play with me. I just want to get in that helicopter, just fly around, and just shoot shit. So that's definitely my favorite one. And I live in Southern California here, right next to a Marine base called Camp Pendleton, which all the vehicles in Battlefield 3 are based on the Marine version type of every vehicle too. So that's something that you could look forward to. Although most vehicles are used in every branch of the service, although some ones are only for certain ones. I think the Viper is actually a Marine only helicopter. Not 100% sure on it. The Air Force may use it, or the Army may use it. I know the Army uses the Apache. I don't know if they use the Viper though at all. But pretty much what happens is, because they have one of the bigger squadrons of the Vipers at Camp Pendleton, so a lot of times when we're fishing and stuff, in between Orange County and San Diego is you've got Camp Pendleton, this huge area. And so what they do is they do flying maneuvers with the Viper all over the ocean. They go to the islands and stuff. They do maneuvers. They fly inland. And they have it's one of the bigger bomb ranges they have for the Marines out here. So every so often too, you'll get to hear like tanks and like mortar fire and the helicopters and stuff flying around and shooting their missiles and everything, which is pretty cool and interesting. And another thing that's always pretty cool is down here for 4th of July, they always have flyovers with the Viper squadrons when you're on the coast watching the fireworks and stuff. So that's always a pretty interesting thing, seeing those all the time. The next vehicle that I've got to touch, and I would have liked to go into, but I wasn't able to. I was going like 3 or 4 years ago. I was going through an Explorer Academy. It was on Camp Pendleton, although it was for the police thing that I was doing at the time. And we got to see some LAVs and some Abrams, and the Abrams were just, God, they're so big and just like awesome when you see them like rolling up into. And when you're on the bases and stuff, a lot of times, at least for Camp Pendleton, it depends, whatever type of vehicles are stationed at that base particularly, but you'll have these huge convoys of Humvees, of Abrams, and LAVs, which is always pretty interesting too. And they stopped them, and we couldn't go in the Abrams. We have to go in the LAV. I'll talk about that in a second. But just the cannons they have in the shells too. They brought one of the shells out. They are just ridiculously big. And so I wish I had pictures from that day. We weren't allowed to have like cameras or anything on the base, anything like that. But it would definitely be pretty fun. I do have a friend that's currently in Afghanistan right now, and he's a tank driver, and he says it was something that he always wanted to do and something that he interested in. So he's doing that right now, and luckily, knock on wood, that he's been safe at least for now. And the LAV, which is actually called the Strikers, it's its real name, because some names they're allowed to use and some they can't due to like naming rights and stuff. And this thing is it's pretty much almost as big as the tank. One thing that was really interesting about the LAV is they're very, very susceptible to IED explosions. And so the four guys, or not the four guys, I think it was like 5 or 6 people who were running that LAV, and we were talking to them. And we actually got to go hit him, and there's no room. And basically, what the LAV is, or the Striker, it's an armored it's a light armored vehicle, so it's a personnel carrier. And my very first time seeing the LAV was fishing about like 3 or 4 years ago too, when every so often the Marines do some like beaching and invasion maneuvers. And so basically what they also have in Camp Pendleton is the hovercraft vehicle squadron is also based there too. So every so often you get to see the hovercrafts like hovering around the ocean. It's pretty trippy, and those things are pretty fast too, and we haven't been too close to those, at least when we're fishing. But they carry the LAVs in the Amtraks, and so what they do when they do their beach maneuvers is they'll drive off about a mile and a half off the ocean, and you'll see the LAVs and the Amtraks just drive into the water, and it's so trippy the first time you see it, because you see this just big like metal vehicle, all of a sudden it's just floating along. I mean, you just expect it to go straight down in the water, and it was that was a very, very interesting experience seeing the LAVs and the Amtraks like just floating along the water a little bit and then going up on the beach. And so I know they can handle some pretty tough surf. I think it was like a few months ago there was one in heavy surf that ended up capsizing, and I think 2 people were killed in that. And so, but other than that, though, they are, from what I've seen at least, they're pretty good and pretty maneuverable when they're in the water, at least. Not all versions 2 are obviously in the water. You're not going to bring a water type 1 in Iraq and Afghanistan, although they do have some of them there because there are some rivers and stuff. But the room inside the vehicles are just like it's pretty trippy. You have like, I think it's like 2 or 3 crewmen in the front of the vehicle, then towards the back of the vehicle is where they actually exit and go out. And they were showing us the smoke tube canisters. There's actually like 3 little like tube canisters that are on the front of the vehicle, the top of the turret at least. And so they have 6 shots of smoke actually is what they carry. The tanks, I believe it was something near the same, but that was pretty interesting too. And they brought the little like smoke canister out. It's more just like a black cylinder thing that looked pretty interesting. And the tires too, I thought was you would think they would be normal tires that they were inflated with air and stuff, but they're actually solid rubber, and so the tires are extremely heavy. And the reason why they're not inflatable too is because you can't shoot them out. Same thing with like the tracks on a tank. Like, it's pretty much almost impossible to knock the tracks off of a tank without an explosive device. And so pretty much with the LAVs, the people who were talking to us actually got hit with an with an IED 3 or 4 months ago before they actually came back towards the base. And so they were talking about it, how pretty much what was happening at the beginning of the invasion of Iraq and stuff with the IEDs is a lot of the times they'd be sticking out a little bit, and what was happening is the vehicles would be flipping over and they would actually be getting crushed and killed that way. And so what they started doing was they started riding inside the vehicles, and no one was allowed to be outside the vehicle anymore. And so when they got hit, of course, it ended up flipping over, and the wheels stayed on. It completely destroyed the LAV, but it was just that was an interesting experience, talking to them and going through that and stuff. I know it has 2 different types of rounds. It's got its normal, it's actually got 3 types of rounds. It's got that the one in the game or whatever, where it's got like some explosive damage. Then it's also got the armored piercing in the game, and then it also has a high explosive round, which also pretty much just explodes, and that's more of like your anti-infantry type of armament there at least. And let's see, what's the next one here? Oh, the F-18. I actually got because that's what my dad did in the military. He was a mechanic, so he got to repair the aircrafts, and even outside the military, once he retired, he still does that right now. He repairs the F-18 Hornets for the company he works for, and Apaches actually too. And so one time when we had the air show over here when he was still in the military, this was probably when I was like 9 or 10 years old. They were working on the Blue Angels, and so I got to meet the pilots and stuff at that time. Of course, the Blue Angel pilots only pilot for about like 2 or 3 years, and they go and they switch them off to a different assignment and stuff. And so I actually got to climb in the cockpit and stuff too, and I got to go visit him one time, even though you're not supposed to as a kid. But yeah, that was a cool experience. I just remember climbing up like in the blue aircraft and sitting in the seat, just like playing with the joystick for a minute, and that was a pretty interesting experience too. And also too, with the base that we've lived on, I've also got to see them take off and land a lot too, which there's some pretty sexy aircraft, I'll tell you that. And the next one here is the Huey. Typically, it's every about like 2 or 3 months there'll be a carrier or battleship that'll come and it'll resupply off Camp Pendleton here. Well, there's no harbor, and so when you're driving on the 5 down to San Diego, there's a view spot where you can go and sit up to where you can actually watch the Vipers come down and do like touch and goes and stuff, like on the helipad. And the Hueys will do practicing for like dropping off like the transports or dropping off troops and stuff. Well, when the carriers and the battleships come, they actually tether up these straps to them. They resupply the ships from land, and it's pretty interesting. They have usually about 4 or 5 Hueys resupplying the carrier or battleship, and so that's always pretty fun if you can get out there and watch the Hueys just fly to the carrier that's about a mile off the land, and they're pretty efficient at doing that. So that's always a cool, interesting experience that I try to when I know the carriers are coming. And the Humvees were traditionally made for the military. Now you can buy them now, although I know they got sold. I don't know if they're actually making new ones still. I'm sure they still are, but I've been in a normal Humvee. They're pretty cool. I haven't been in a military one, and from the people that I've talked to, I hear they are just horrible. There's no air conditioning. It's completely hot. They're outdated, but other than that, for your own like personal use, they're pretty fun. But when you're actually like in the military, I hear they just suck. They're just hot. They're just annoying. A lot of times too, when you're on the 5 freeway in the south at least, or Southern California, and you'll see Humvees doing convoys and stuff. And I've talked to people who do that, and they absolutely hate it. You have no air conditioning. You can only drive like 70 miles an hour in them, and you have to be in full combat gear when you leave the base in them too, and so you're just dying with no air conditioning. And so at least it's in Southern California from that point of view at least. And the F-35, here's a little fact of the day. The F-35 is actually, it's still like an experimental aircraft, but they're actually having problems with the oxygen in that. And so what's happening is they're having the pilots are having like oxygen asphyxiation every so often too. So that's a problem they actually haven't really figured out yet with the F-35. The A-10 Thunderbolt, I've only seen that in air shows, like doing like little flyovers and stuff. They always do like the pretend like dropping bombs and like the strafing runs, and they always set up like fireballs or whatever in the field, and they explode when they're flying over. But those things are pretty crazy with how low they can fly and how slow they can actually go too. And then I don't know, the engines just kick in and they're able to fly back up in the air really quickly. And let's see, the Amtrak. The Amtrak, like I said earlier, was really cool and interesting seeing them drive off the hoverboat and just bounce along the water, slowly going to the beach. And so that was pretty interesting. And I think the last one, because the other ones I don't have any other experience with, except this one is our hib boat, or whatever you want to call it. I usually just call it the rib boat. Even I just take the H out just because I think it's cool to call it that and stuff. And so a lot of times I'll be fishing near San Clemente Island here, and it's an island that's owned by the Navy, and so the Navy and the Marines use it. The SEALs use it to train there a lot of the times on the island. And so every so often when they kick you out of the island, as everyone calls it around here, the SEALs get in this little boat, and they kick you out, and they got a 50 cal on it, and there's usually 4 people in the boat, 1 man in a machine gun, 1 driving, the other 2 guys are usually the ones that board your boat or talk to you. And so that's really cool seeing that one up close. That's happened to me about 2 times where I went to see it up close too. Another time you'll see that boat is the Coast Guard uses the exact same boat in harbors or in territories too, when boats come in. So like I know when the cruise ships go in and out of U.S. territories, the Coast Guard is always there with those type of boats. And those things are pretty fast. They're very maneuverable, especially even in rough seas. I was really surprised seeing it just bounce around and be completely fine out in the ocean too. But I mean, those are some pretty crazy guys, the SEALs at least. So it's a little different commentary today, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the commentary and this little mix of helicopter, Amtrak, and boat gameplay. And thanks for watching, guys.
What up, Josh?